My first mission was about 28, 29 December, somewhere in there. It was what we call Hades Escort. And that was flying suppression air cover for the C-123s that were spraying Agent Orange. And it was an early in the morning mission so that there was no wind. And at that time, there was not any real consideration about the harmful effects of Agent Orange. And it was a new guy's mission because it was simple, easy, and nothing ever happened. So they would come down in an echelon formation, they'd fly along, and we would be doing a racetrack above them. Our mission was if they took ground fire, there would also be a forward air controller there. He would then direct us to put ordnance on where the fire came from. Well, then when they were done, they would go up like this, and the spray is settling down. We're hot dogs, we'd just go flying through it because we thought it was cool. Then we would, I only did that a few times, I don't know how many. Most of our missions were pretty much the same. You know, we're working with forward air controller. We're doing what we're being told to do. Initially, I recall that you would see tracers coming at you. Then later on, they quit using tracers because that identified where they were from. One mission where I really realized, I thought these birds were flying by the cockpit. I said, wait a minute, those are tracers. They're shooting at me. And then I developed a saying that's helped me when people ask me about Vietnam. They said, you know, people say, well, you must have had some bad things. And my answer is, they were allowed to shoot back. And that kind of terminates the conversation. There were missions where we would go against, the target would be guns. And you're thinking, well, that definitely means they're shooting back. I remember having some anxiety one time about one of those. Oftentimes, when you went from the base to the target area, you did not know really what your target was going to be, the situation you would be in. Once you got into that, now your training kicks in, you're performing your procedures, you're doing what you need to do. You're not philosophizing about it. You don't have the time to do that. There are times when, you know, I would rather not have been there, but I'm able to take that, park it in this box over here, close the door, go on with my lives. Almost every time we would fly, we were with a FAC. There was a time when we get to talk about Cambodia, I will tell that, where we were FACs ourselves. About the end of April, one time about 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody's pulling on my toes. It's not Dwight, he's sleeping in the top bunk, I've got the bottom. And it's a squadron member saying, come on down squadron. So we all went down the squadron, it's dark. And we were briefed that we're gonna fly, as soon as it gets light, we're gonna fly into Cambodia. And we loaded wall-to-wall CBU, cluster bomb, and we flew 4 ships, which we never did. And we took off just as it's still just barely getting light, flew in from the east with the sun behind us, and over these sanctuary areas that were across the border. So we did that. We went back to the base, walked in the squadron. They've got AFN, Armed Forces Network radio was on. We always had it on because it's music. And Nixon is announcing that he's going to send the troops into Cambodia, and we just got back. We thought it was pretty funny. And then we did more of that. Then one day we went to work, and they said, you're going to fly reconnaissance. Well, our airplane was not a reconnaissance airplane. But we had the A-37 is interesting. It had 2 engines, 2 seats, 1 pilot. So the right seat was empty. Well, we put a guy in the right seat with a Pentax camera and a 300 millimeter lens. And the aircraft actually had a strike camera, it was called KB-19, in the belly. And it would take a photograph from horizon to horizon, about 70 millimeter wide film. And you'd get a pretty good image of what was below you. So we did that, and once we got into Cambodia, it was to infiltrate, or rather to interdict the infiltration routes from the north. So we wanted to recce those. We would follow the highways and things like that. And we did that. The mission was called Typhoon. that was interesting. There was not, at the time you just do it and you forget about it. There's not a lot of documentation on it, but I've talked around to other people. There were 3 A-37 squadrons at the base at the time, and I didn't know if it was only the dice. I was in the 90th. We were the Paradise, hence the dice. The 8th were the dogs, and the 604th were the raps. Those were our call signs, rap, dog, and dice. I thought initially it was only the dice that did it. Well, I found out there was a handful of pilots from each squadron. The mission was called Typhoon. Then after a week or two, we go to work one day and they say, you're going to FAC. When we went into Cambodia, activities expanded rather rapidly, and they ran out of forward air controllers. So we were the standbys. And we put in, I think I FAC'd 4 missions. That was, we didn't have any training, we just go do it. We had been working with FACs, so we kind of knew what to do. We had to coordinate. There was an OV-10 that had a FAC in the front and a Cambodian officer in the back, and we would coordinate with them. We'd have to get clearance from them to put in an airstrike or whatever it may be. I recall one time there was a clearing that a road went through, and in the middle of the clearing there was a stalled truck. And in order to camouflage it, they'd cut branches down and set them up like tents. I mean, you might as well put a signed truck here. And I wanted to put an airstrike in there, and I couldn't get the clearance. So next day I went back, and I got the clearance, and the truck's gone, the branches are all laying along the side of the road. That was Vietnam. Typhoon basically consisted of the reconnaissance missions and then the forward air controller missions. And the program only lasted about 2 months. But we were kind of proud of having done that. We made our little Typhoon stripe on our flight suit,